looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. Now, there are many reasons why the Saw films of the late 2000s resonated so much and forged a yearly pageantry of sequels, blood drives, and a fandom who, to this day, has seen the spin-off Spiral and the incoming Saw X to add to its legacy. But one of the reasons that the Saw films were so popular was the ingenuity and cruelty of the traps, that we, the viewer, could wince and kind of empathise with the pain. Now, I can't empathise with being thrown through a concrete wall, being caught in a car bomb, or even shot, because it's never happened to me and, fingers crossed, never will. But I have stepped on a Lego brick with a bare foot, I've had blood taken with a sharp needle, and I've also cut myself, both accidentally and deliberately as well, and I've also been burned by touching a hot pan out of blind stupidity, and those painful memories are really vivid. As I stated in my neuro-linguistic programming video about the movie Seven, all information is stored in our neocortexes via interpretation and absorption of our five senses. After all, what is memory? Memory is an electrical synapse which conjures images and feelings, but it's just that. It's an electrical synapse. If I cut someone's head open and looked at their brain, I wouldn't see their memories or pictures or be able to pull out a feeling and go, look, that's a feeling, because right now, everything in your brain, all those memories and pictures, are just that. They're stored interpretations of information received through the five senses. As we navigate through this phenomenal field of reality, we taste, touch, see, hear, and smell things, and all these things interact in complex ways with our memories and perceptions. And one of the things which stays with us is pain. After all, it's a physical sensation felt through the senses, so it gets remembered, much like that time you saw Taylor Swift live, first laid eyes on your true love, or heard that tune of your favourite TV show. And it's one of Saw's secrets that the traps they use are both medieval, yes, and vivid, but they're ultimately familiar. If you've ever had a short pain from something sharp or hot, then the build-up to someone cutting themselves, putting their hand in a pan of boiling water, or doing something that you know is going to hurt because you've had a very minor taste of that pain, puts you on edge. It recalls that time and pain which was so discomforting, and the thought of now someone having to inflict something 100 or 1,000 times worse on themselves is what can cause even the strongest stomach to look away or someone to cover their ears. We also get reminders through our central nervous system, both part of our hippocampi memories and also as a reminder not to do things that cause pain again, as our central nervous system also has a kind of built-in memory. The Saw movies were quite brilliant at putting the most extreme traps through slow, voyous situations, and all while your own memories and central nervous system tics recalled much less but very painful situations that made you wince, and therefore when you're seeing it happen on screen, you can appreciate how difficult that is, because a little part of you goes, oh god, that would hurt. However, for all of Jigsaw's traps, there's one film that has a rather nasty game which beats them all in terms of nightmarish situations for me. Now, I talk about pain being something you remember, but also embarrassment and fear are equally vividly stored within our neocortexes. Okay, so this situation from this film may not be on the most painful side, although I suppose later on it could have been, but in terms of finding yourself in a situation which belongs in a nightmare, walking the streets in your underwear in a rough neighbourhood with a deliberately offensive sign that's meant to attract violence is surely up there with walking in to watch a football match amongst the roughest and most fearsome of supporters, all while dressed in the strip of their closest rivals. Like I said, this film doesn't deal with something as painful as sticking your hand in a bowl of Jigsaw's acid, but you're probably going to get tortured to death by a gang of thugs, so the terror in your fight and flight response is still there, it's going to be immense, and you also can feel the amount of pain and difficulty someone would experience when doing what John McClane did in the 1990 film Die Hard with a Vengeance. And in terms of Die Hard with a Vengeance, I don't think McClane's Harlem Walk with that board has been topped in terms of ingenuity, cruelty, and absolute terror of what that would do to someone. Okay, some context first. Die Hard with a Vengeance was the third Die Hard film and, for me, the true sequel to the first one after the repetitive outcomes of Die Hard 2. Basically, rather than have a film where McClane fights an army of terrorists yet again in some kind of airport or building or whatever, it's set across the whole of New York and sees McClane embroiled in a game of a very dangerous Simon Says, where if he fails, then more innocent people are going to get blown up and die. The culprit behind this, and also a man running a heist on the side, is Simon Gruber, brother of Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber, who led the assault on Nakatomi Plaza in the first film, and he is a little annoyed that some dumb Irish flatfoot dropped his brother off a roof, and so decides to play this game of Simon Says, where if McClane fails or doesn't do exactly what Simon says, then there'll be another big bomb in a very public place. Die Hard 3 was refreshing, silly, exciting, added a much-needed local conflict and recognisable antagonism between McClane and the main bad guy, and, but for a rather rubbish showdown with Simon at the very end, which should have been the ultimate fight and Machiavellian usurping of the other Gruber brother, ended up with a cheap one-liner and a rather dull end for Jeremy Irons' Simon. Speaking of neurolinguistic programming and interpreting through senses, many films fail to capture the scenery and framing of their establishing shots, but this isn't the case with Die Hard 3. From the opening barbs of Summer in the City, there is no lengthy credit roll, and we just see New York in all its morning glory as a smoky, cramped, bustling, and fully active city which we can almost taste and feel the heat of. Even the music here, the Lovin' Spoonful's Summer in the City, isn't an accidental choice, because the lyrics sing quite openly about the heat and the steam of the city, and it adds to the tapestry of what we are seeing, and by the time the bomb goes off after only about 2 minutes into the movie, we see some truly devastating shots of the explosion from afar, as it shows us just how cramped and dense the populace is through the lines of traffic which are crawling past the now destroyed department store and devastated dead bodies. Evocative, thrilling, and a real surprise if you're munching on your popcorn and just sat down, Die Hard with a Vengeance then establishes our lead bad guy Simon, Inspector Cobb, and brings in the now disgraced and suspended McClane, all within minutes of the movie's opening money shot. Simon's first game of Simon Says is that McClane must go to Harlem, strip down to his knickers, and walk the streets for 15 minutes with a sandwich board that says, I hate...
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
Which is written in a nasty red font. It's quite simple. Put a white man in the middle of a very economically deprived and predominantly black neighbourhood, virtually naked and vulnerable, with a sign designed to attract violence and hatred, and see how long he lasts before he's attacked. Now, if you've ever driven through a strange neighbourhood, sat in traffic at a really rough place, or felt exposed in a vulnerable place, then your amygdala, fight and flight, central nervous systems, and all the fearful, risk-assessing parts of your brain will go up in flames. Even the cocky McClane admits he's scared to death when in the van, a side we don't normally see from the yippee-ki-yay spouting hardman, because he knows just how dangerous and ludicrously insane this task is going to be. It's worth noting that, for graded tension, the first person McClane meets whilst wearing the board is an elderly black woman who looks at him with disdain but says nothing. We then cut to McClane's disgust at what he's having to do, and this clearly establishes that this overt race baiting and life or death nightmare is scary, but also deeply offensive to McClane, and he doesn't like what he's doing, partly for his own safety, and also for the fact that he's making people feel offended. Now, at this point, we don't know that McClane's sign says, I hate.
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
The true reveal comes when we meet the Good Samaritan Zeus, played by Sam Jackson, who is going to be the second half of this buddy comedy which is going to hold the film together. It's Zeus who, after being told by his kids there's a white man on the corner of the street, comes out and sees the situation, then sees the gang about 10 feet away and realises how bad this is about to get. Die Hard with a Vengeance plays hard with American race relations, from McClane being a white cop to Zeus saving him to stop an army of white cops coming to Harlem with itchy trigger fingers if he died, to Zeus's own racial prejudices which are used by McClane when he lies to him about what school the bomb has been placed in. Remember the scene where McClane says, look, this guy doesn't care about skin colour, even if you do. It was a truly brilliant way of keeping these two together and also at each other's throats for the whole film. Anyway, back to our Harlem Walk, and now we see the sign, I hate.
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
And the severity of the situation sinks in. Quick fact for you movie fans, the movie crew couldn't actually let Bruce Willis wear a sign that says, I hate.
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
Because they feared he would have been killed for real, even though it was clearly a film and everyone was there and they had lots of security. So he wore a sign which said, I hate everybody, and later on in post-production, it was CGI'd with, I hate.
Oh, naggers, of course.
Actually, when McClane gets out the van, for the splittest of seconds between him and Cobb putting on the board, you can see the true sign. Anyway, just a fun fact there. So, if you've ever had a dream where you weren't dressed or walking around in a strange city in just your pants, or ever been lost somewhere scary and maybe economically deprived where no one knows you and people keep looking at you, you can identify straight away with McClane's predicament. Anyway, without going on and on about everything that happens after Zeus meets McClane, a gang of lads seize the sign and commence a slow execution of McClane before, upon about to be kicked and stabbed to death, Zeus decides to save him, and thus we start the next Simon Says game from our chief antagonist. Now, race relations between the black community and the police are well known in parts of America, and this is another reason why the scene is so clever. McClane has fought baddies, terrorists, and blonde German bodybuilders with machine guns, but now just a frightened white guy stripped down to his knickers and wearing a sign which is designed to provoke a strong reaction, we can feel his vulnerability, and upon the gang seeing him and then encroaching him, all the quips and wisecracks vanish, and the Hollywood gloss of the lone hero vanishes. McClane is terrified, and you can see it. This isn't like Nakatomi Plaza or the airport. Yes, he's outnumbered as he was there, but this is a completely different situation. At the behest of a madman and facing a street gang, there's no way out of this. He's gonna die. Spoiler alert, McClane doesn't die, but he does take quite the licking, both physically and emotionally, as the gang gleefully bounce basketballs against his head, punch him, get a knife out, and then tell him they're going to teach him a lesson. And for all his antics in the first two films and quippy one-liners, McClane is now truly helpless. Now, I've found myself in some scary neighbourhoods, and I've also been mugged a few times when I lived in my former home, the city of Birmingham, which is in the middle of England and has a population of about 4 million people, and I can empathise with how scary it is when you're trying to reason with someone who's aggressive and gets more and more intense the more they realise how frightened you are. I may not have been wearing a sandwich board that said, I hate.
Oh, naggers, of course.
But I still felt vulnerable, I was outnumbered, and I was clearly in a situation which was only going to get worse for myself. Whenever you're outnumbered, outgunned, or just overpowered, and this can be for domestic violence, muggings, or even someone just looking for an easy fight one day, fear enters a transactional escalation over reason, and no matter how much you beg, the intoxication of being more powerful and seeing someone mule before you is every sadist's wet dream. It was crucial that McClane didn't fight his way out of this one, or quip the thugs into submission, because everything about that scene is painted as inescapable and frightening. McClane goes to pieces as the violence escalates, and the fact that he is a white male, a police officer, and placed in Harlem of all places shows Simon's sadism and immediately triggers the connective receptors of everyone watching, even if they aren't experts in American history. Harlem is known as a predominantly black neighbourhood. It's economically deprived, and Bruce Willis is a white male. It's all simple building blocks for your mind to assemble without a history lesson or being an expert in the civil rights movement. Also, this isn't pushing identity politics like we've had in some films recently. It's taking the very real-life situation of race relations in America and putting you in the middle of a truly uncomfortable altercation that is believable. Like I stated at the start, you know acid hurts, needles are sharp, and knives cut. So, when the basic connotations of a hand plus acid or face plus sharp knives are laid out for you to absorb, the whole notion of pain triggers an empathic response in your head. The same thing goes with the nightmarish situation of being a white man in the middle of Harlem wearing a sign that says, I hate.
Oh, naggers, of course.
It immediately tells you all you need to know about how dangerous and horrific that situation would be. Your mind fills in the blocks and the blanks of exactly how bad that would be if that was you in that situation. Jigsaw plays many different games in Saw, and there are many moments in movies where you realise just how nasty things are going to get. But for me, Die Hard with a Vengeance's Harlem Walk is a terrifyingly clever idea which connects the dots in your head, puts you in that worst nightmare, and makes you genuinely fear for the protagonist. I also like how this scene pulls in Sam Jackson's character of Zeus. He's not there just for show. He actually affects and drives the whole film. Zeus saves McClane at great cost to himself because he doesn't want a white police force taking retribution in Harlem with itchy trigger fingers after a bunch of black kids kill a white cop. Therefore, he then has to join the game or a school gets blown up, and their bickering and bonding gives the film its emotional connection and heart, and they both repeatedly save each other and bicker and tease each other, and this builds their relationship. Like I said at the start, we all receive and interpret and store information through our senses, and whether you've ever cut yourself on something, stepped on a Lego brick, broken down in a scary neighbourhood, or been mugged, certain notions activate those memories. And even if you haven't been mugged, the film wants to establish fear and horror in the most primal ways, and it does that with a situation which, straight away through the neural connections in your head and human understanding of empathy and danger, makes you realise just how scary the situation is going to be. Much like you might get tense or feel uncomfortable when someone's trying to find a key from within a pit of used needles like Saw 2, you can also feel your heart rate increase at the nightmare of being the wrong colour, in the wrong neighbourhood, wearing just your underwear, and carrying a sign which is designed to get you killed. If for any reason you haven't watched Die Hard 3, then go watch the first one, as it's brilliant, forget the second one, and then watch Die Hard with a Vengeance, as it's a truly brilliant piece of 90s cinema that puts McClane through the ringer and doesn't outstay its welcome. Like I said, the final fight at the end is a bit disappointing, but I'll forgive that because everything before it is done with such glee and wonder and brilliance. I just can't fault it. Anyway, that's it for this week's video, so remember that psychology is cool. Anyway, please like, share and subscribe, or even leave a comment, as they always generate good debate or even a suggestion for a future video. And as ever, until next time, I'll catch you later.
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.